Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dental Women's Podcast. I'm Raabiha and I'm joined with the lovely Dr. Sonia today. How are you, Sonia?
Very well. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for coming on so late at night. When the kids are in bed, this is when we podcast. And Sonia is actually not a dentist. She's a medical doctor turned founder, product developer, tech guru. What do we call you now? Because you've gone into products. So how do you like to be defined now?
It's tough. I don't really love the labels. I guess I'm officially the CEO of the company.
I like that.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I've never really been one for labels and job titles. I think we all have a job to do. My job's quite specific. But yeah.
Well, today we're going to talk about your very interesting journey because you were an A&E doctor and then you decided to get into, dental products. What was that moment where you decided, you know what, I don't want to practice medicine. I want to do something else. I want to build. Like, what was that moment for you?
So I was an A&E doctor for a long time, but I had started a business while I was a doctor. I started an education business, so I had some experience building companies and building solutions to solve people's problems. I think that is how you pretty much summarize company building. But then I decided to take some time and go into management consultancy in between. So I
Yeah.
spent nearly 4 years at a management consultancy firm called the Boston Consulting Group in London. At the time, this was before COVID, that was a job that required a lot of travel. So I would be consulting for big companies in the healthcare space, in the private sector, but also in the NHS, but also completely different sectors. So I spent time working in companies that were in the mining space, and in luxury fashion, and then in airlines. So I got a really good sense of life outside of medicine.
Yes, very diverse.
Yeah, I think when you're a medic and probably also as a dentist, you spend your time at dental school with other people on that journey. And because the degree is longer than everybody else, I don't know if you found this, um, you are still at university while everyone else is getting jobs, or your
Yeah.
contemporaries are getting jobs. And you're headed down this track, and at the end of the day, really everyone that you're hanging out with is medics. And so
Mm.
I really wanted to see what the world had to offer and what everybody else was doing for a job. Because when I was at university, I did actually end up, I lived with a lot of non-medics. And so I saw lawyers and bankers, and it just felt like a completely alien world. And so having the chance to experience that, you really go into a proper corporate job and see all of the positives and the negatives that come with that was really helpful. And then towards the end of that, I spent a year building with a team a health tech business. So that was a company that was helping patients with hemophilia monitor their treatment. So hemophilia is actually a very expensive condition to manage. Treatments, can be in the hundreds of thousands of pounds because you have to give patients the clotting factor. And that has quite a specific half-life. And so for each patient, it's different. And so people were not exactly sure when they should be taking the next dose. And so we built this app that would look at someone's kind of own half-life, and then they would be able to predict and track when exactly they should be injecting their clotting
Oh,
factor, which
smart.
which was an amazing product, and it still does very well. And it's obviously a very niche use case, but obviously very powerful for those patients.
Is that what kind of got you into like the tech kind of mindset of
Yeah,
healthcare?
yeah, exactly. Because part of that was learning how to build a tech product from scratch, which again
Mm.
I'd not done before, and I'd not really seen that part of the world. And when you start to dig into that area, you do get exposed to an awful lot of innovation
Yeah.
and the new things that are happening at the cutting edge of healthcare in general, whether that's in medicine or in dentistry. You start to see this the future is what you're exposed to. Spent
Mm.
a lot of time, especially in that job, working with non-clinicians, looking at all this amazing innovation that was coming to market and talking about like the frontier, and patients are going to get access to these amazing treatments and these protocols and these devices. And I was always reminding people that, look, if you want patients to get hold of these things, you do have to work with your clinical workforce. You have to work with your clinicians, because
Right.
if you don't, then all of this is going to sit dusty on a proverbial shelf. You
Yeah.
know, if you can't get doctors and healthcare professionals feeling confident taking on the next generation of products, you're wasting your time. And I don't know, I felt like I was the kind of bar humbug of the conversation at that point. And so that was really part of what I left to go and do, is to say, well, I think that the voice of the clinician is not really being heard here. I think there is actually so much innovation that should be making its way into the hands of patients more quickly. And I think that what
Mm.
people are missing is the fact that our clinical workforce is the unlock to that. And so that's kind of where it all started.
But then why did you pivot like you from medical to dental? That's what I don't understand. Like, why not just go into another medical device? Why aligners?
Yeah, I think at the time, I mean, I looked at a lot of different things. I looked at longevity. I was looking a lot at women's health as well. I was particularly
Mm.
interested in the menopause and how poorly we manage that
Yeah.
everywhere, to be honest.
Yes.
And but at the time, there was this really big company that was doing very well that I couldn't really understand, and that was Smile Direct Club.
Yes.
Smile
Just
Direct
talk.
Club was huge in those days, and you know, I'm like I said, like you said, I'm not a dentist, but I did spend time speaking to dentists about this innovation and what they thought about it. Having myself had lots of ortho when I was a kid, I remember being shuttled back and forth to the orthodontist, and remember thinking this is not that straightforward. So I'm
Mm.
not really sure how you're supposed to do all of that online, but you know,
Yes.
who knows? And then I was speaking to dentists and they're like, this is a very bad idea.
It is.
This just isn't going to work. And so, you know, we started talking I started talking to dentists and saying, why are you not offering this?
Mm.
Because clearly patients want this and they're resorting to the internet and, you know, flashy marketing, and they're being promised the world. But why aren't they just coming to you? They're seeing you every year, and they should be seeing you every year.
Mm.
And what dentists were saying was, look, I don't necessarily feel like I had a whole bunch of training in
Mm.
orthodontics at dental school. So I would love to be able to help my patients with this, but there is actually, I don't have that level of confidence that I could absolutely nail this treatment every single time,
Yeah.
because I just don't have that level of experience. So I thought that was an interesting problem. It was a really good example of what I said, is that, you know, the clear aligner is not exactly a new device. I mean, it was invented in the late 90s, but I don't know that it's made its way mass into the dental curriculum. And so it's relatively new. So how do you, if patients really want this, you know, we need to work with our clinical workforce to make that possible. And we need to listen to dentists and ask them what they want and what they need. And that's kind of that's where it all came from.
Mm. What did you ever feel, when you kind of decided, okay, this is what I want to go into, and you realize there's something missing? Did you ever think, do you know what? I'm a doctor. Like, this isn't my space. Like, did imposter syndrome ever creep in?
I actually think it was incredibly helpful, because I wasn't pretending that I knew anything. I could ask all of the stupid questions. So I could say to someone, I have no idea how this device works. Can someone explain it to me like I'm 5? And I would get those answers from orthodontists, and they would explain. And so I went on the learning journey myself to understand how these aligners work, and what the challenges were for a dentist in feeling confident, and where things could go wrong as well. So I actually think it was really helpful. I wonder whether it would have been different if I'd gone into something medical, where there was a sense of having some experience and maybe not being able to be a complete beginner in something. Now, that said, I think that one thing about good product development, and when I'm talking about product, I'm talking, for us, it's about technology, is being able to work really closely with your future customers, and spend time trying to understand what they need. And I don't know that we are always very good as doctors and clinicians at explaining what we need or saying the thing on our mind, because I think we spend a lot of time, certainly to patients, pretending like we know what we're doing or like we really know everything.
This is it, right?
I don't really know, isn't a natural thing that happens. So it took a lot of work. It really took a lot of work to say, how do you build the best possible platform for a dentist to feel like they're a rock star at this treatment if they don't even know what to ask for, because they don't know what's possible and they don't know necessarily how to say, I would love to have this, because if you don't know it's possible, then you don't always have the words, and you don't even have the concept in your head. So the idea that we might be able to get an orthodontist to work with you virtually, no one asked for that, but it was when I said, what would happen if we just had an orthodontist that was just helping you? And then people said, well, I guess that would kind of be amazing, yeah, but I don't think that's possible. And that's how you then start to build out the product. So not so much imposter syndrome. I was actually embraced the I guess the beginner mindset, and I think it really helped build a better product.
I never thought of it that way. The fact that you knew nothing meant that you could ask all the right questions that usually we're afraid to and think of it in a different way. That's, yeah, very refreshing, actually. But when you started on this journey, you would have done your research, right? You would have known there's already a global company, Invisalign, a line out there that has the biggest market share. Like, what made you think, that you could essentially take them on or, take some of their market share?
I think it's very easy to get distracted by the competition, or by the perceived competition. I personally feel that the rising tide tends to float all boats. And so if you're on a mission to try and help make good quality orthodontic treatment available to people, then anyone who's on that journey is kind of more of an ally than anything else. Align is an amazing company, and they invented the device. So they've earned the right to get to where they've been. But that's not to say that the choices they've made and everything that they've done has been perfect for everybody. And I think that's okay. But for me, the question was more, if I were to just ignore all the competition and just try and build something from scratch that is, like I said, exactly what a dentist would want, what decisions would I make? And the decisions that we ended up making were different in terms of the product than the ones that some of the other players had made. And we just had to believe that we were making the right call and that what we were building was actually what people wanted. And if you take that approach, rather than wondering whether what you're doing is the same or different to a competitor, if you just stay really focused on what you're trying to do, I think you build a better product. And I think that goes pretty much for everything. I think it's very easy, in dentistry especially, to look around you and compare yourself and almost have like a checklist of things that they have that you don't have, and point scoring. And it's not about that, right? You're on the same mission, you're trying to do the same thing, and you can have your own really specific niche and belief and way of doing things, and you can be excellent at that. And you don't have to try and compare yourself to others to build an incredible experience or service or product.
It's actually what I say about people when they come onto social media, not comparing your journey, just being authentically you. And I didn't think of applying that to products, because sometimes you think, there's already too many. And that's what I thought when I first came on social media. There's already too many dentists on there. But I like the fact that you can apply that concept to products as well. But focusing on your product and what the customer actually wants, I think, is what helps you stand apart, because you're constantly innovating at 32Co. That's kind of what drew me to you. So yeah, I love that you're focused on what the customer needs, and I think that's why the competition doesn't scare you.
Yeah, and I would also say, the principles that we applied to helping and to thinking about what is it that's going to get a clinician feeling confident doing something that they want to do and that is good for patients, that is less about orthodontics, actually. It's applicable to everything. And so for me, what's interesting is how else do we apply that and where else do we apply it to, which is why, the next thing that we're working on is in sleep, because that is an area that we really don't do a very good job of looking after patients.
No.
On the medical side especially, it is very difficult to get an answer on what is causing me to be so tired, and to get treatment for things like sleep apnea. And we were talking about it before we started, and talking about that question arises at all ages, and I think that we can do better, and I think dentists have a really big role to play in that I think isn't discussed. I think it's
No.
becoming clearer now, but again, I think it's such a good example of where if we spend time working with clinicians and figure out what is it that's stopping you from doing this. And I understand what it is. In sleep, it's a bit medical. I don't want to step on any toes. I'm not really allowed to diagnose anything. So, and so really spending time with people and say, what exactly do you need to feel comfortable doing this? And from scratch, building the concept around that, I think is going to be really game changing. So it's less about the orthodontics and it's more about the principles of how you empower people.
How do you develop a mindset like this? Like, a lot of women that I talk to, they innately have this perfectionist mindset, like it's not going to be good enough, and they imposter syndrome always comes up. But when I listen to you, it just sounds so clear. You seem to get an idea. Nothing kind of seems to stop you, and you kind of get the obstacles out of the way, and you just go. Like, what has made you that person?
It's a good question. I think, well, I will say I've done a lot of different jobs, right? So I was a doctor, and then I was a consultant, and so I've been a beginner at every job, a few times, which means that I have been bad at a job quite a few times. So I'm not afraid of just being bad at something and learning, right? So I think I am a perfectionist, but it applies to certain parts of the process, but certainly not in trying things and giving it a go. And although I think I have a very clear view of how I think the world should look, and it's to do with our primary care clinicians, our doctors, our dentists, having a more fulfilled existence and being able to do more for patients. How you achieve that, I'm actually quite flexible on, and we've tried things that haven't worked, and that's completely fine. That's actually great, and talk a lot about failing and failing really properly. Like really, if you're going to do it, then fail properly, and then at least it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do know what I mean, especially in dentistry, right? You're working in microns, millimeters of space, and so to just be able to say, "Oh, I'm happy with 80%," is not that natural. But I think that if you've got a clear view of what you want to do, and you know what your one-way doors and your two-way doors are, so the idea that there are some decisions that are reversible, right? You can try something and it can not work. It's completely reversible. This is the Jeff Bezos principles for Amazon. There are some things that are one-way doors where if you do it badly, then it's some bad stuff is going to happen. And as long as you know the difference between those two things, you have quite a lot of freedom to explore and experiment and sort of wind your way to the right answer.
I've not heard that before, actually. I like this, the one-way, two-way door thing. I've heard the analogy about balls, when you're juggling many balls and which ones are glass and you can let them go, and you can't let them go, and which are rubber and they'll
I think
bounce
it's
back.
similar.
This door concept is, it's very interesting. I like that. Where I think a lot of us in healthcare get this perfectionist mindset is to get to where we are, we've had to be the best in all your grades, best in all your extracurricular activities, best at university. You can just go, go, go. And we become so tunnel vision that we have to be the best. We have to be perfect. And there's no room for failure. Otherwise, then you are not going to be where you are. So it's just refreshing, the fact that you did so many different things and had to start over and weren't good at certain things. And that's what's led you to that mindset that actually, let's just try. And it doesn't matter if I'm good at it or not. And if we fail, it's okay. We just try again. So I think that's what sets you apart from a lot of the people that I've come across, which is fantastic.
I also think that getting good at something is a skill in and of itself. So it is a very deliberate decision to say, I am currently I would like to do this better, faster, more accurately, whatever it is. I'm gonna put explicit steps in place to get good at this. I think sometimes we get to the point where we're just frustrated, and we just say, "Look, I just don't think I'm made for this. I don't think I'm very good at this." And the process of saying, "I think I can get to the point where I am, and I can shorten that because I've done it so many times. I know what it feels like to be out of my depth, but that's okay. I'm just going to attack it head on." You can get faster and faster at that. So I think I think especially for young people, I as a young person, if you think about the skills that we learn at school, and it's a lot about rote learning, and it's a lot about regurgitating, things for exams, which again, like you say, we had to get very good at. Actually learning to start something from scratch, see the accelerated improvement that you can make in a short period of time, and get motivation from that, I think is a really important thing for us to pass on to the next generation. When you think about your kids.
Yeah, that's got me thinking about my kids and how I can help them do that. Because I'm just thinking about myself growing up. If there's something that I struggled with or didn't enjoy, I'd be like, I don't want to do it anymore. So now I wish that my parents forced me, and they would be like, it's okay. If you don't want to do the piano, it's okay. I was like, yeah, 4 lessons, I'm not a pro, so I don't want to do this anymore. So yeah, this is it. Well, yeah, what you've done with Editor Co is phenomenal. Like anyone who hasn't used your Aligner system should really check it out. And I'm a big advocate for Editor Co because every bloody week you guys got a new thing. Junaid comes to me like, we've got this new tool, we've got this new thing, and I just love the rate at which you innovate, and finding gaps that, like we were talking about, that even I didn't realize that, oh, do you know what, you're right, we could do this, we could do that. How did you find that team to think like that? Are all these ideas coming from you, or is this team that you've built? Like, how have you done this?
Yeah, people are the most important part of the business. Any business, you run a business, you know that yourself. For me, the things that make people successful are, they have to be smart and they have to have real grit and creativity. So those are the things that we test for. And yeah, I think, so what specifically, I look for evidence in people's CVs or backgrounds that they've been exceptional at something. And it doesn't matter what that is. You could be the most exceptional pastry chef, extreme knitting champion, athlete. It doesn't matter. But what it shows is that you can be really obsessive about something. And you're going to throw, I feel like I use this term a lot, you're going to throw the kitchen sink at a problem. And when you get lots of people like that in a room,
I've never heard of that.
I don't know why. I feel like I'm just using it a lot because we'll get a problem, and the instruction to the team is, guys, we're going to throw the kitchen sink at this. We're going to all hands on deck.
It's normally like you're going to pack everything but the kitchen sink, right? That's the saying. I have not heard about throwing the kitchen sink. I think you made this one up, Sonia.
I might have made it up, but it's doing the rounds now. So yeah, it's getting people who are willing to get in a room together and throw ideas around and ultimately get to the right answer. When you build a team like that where everybody performs at that level, it's a really motivating place. And coming into the office is very fun, and people work extremely hard, but it's because they're really passionate, and they really want to build the best product, and they really want our customers to have the best experience. And so any bit of feedback that comes in from anywhere, someone is looking at that, someone is passing it on, someone is thinking, well, what can we do with this? So anyone who's ever given us feedback, it's always been looked at. And it might not be the next thing that gets built, but someone is looking at building it.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. I think every time I fed back something to Junaid, he's like, yeah, working on that. Oh, great, yes. And I love his enthusiasm for ideas as well, and the willingness for feedback. I think that's why you're growing at the rate that you're growing. And you said, yes, you look for grit in your team, but what else do you look for? Because I'm really interested in how you've built that team that you've built, because I think anybody in business can say that team culture and just finding the right people is so difficult. So I want to know, what are the processes you have, any secrets to getting that right team? Like, what is it? And building that culture.
So I think there's other components as well. I think explaining to people what the vision is and the mission, and making it clear that we really are shooting for the moon, and if you want to be part of that, then this is the place to be. But it's gonna come with responsibility. So run a very high trust, high responsibility company and team. So you get a lot of freedom to build and to work on things, but you have to maintain. I talk a lot about the trust battery in the company. So this is the idea that you've got a battery that's full of trust, and if you think about somebody else, having a high trust battery means that everybody basically thinks you're incredible and that they can't wait to work with you on a project. And they know that you are not going to drop the ball, and you're going to produce creative output fast, and it's going to be inspiring, and it's going to be high quality. You know those people where you think, if they're working on this is going to be incredible.
Yeah.
And if everybody is thinking about their own trust battery, then it's infectious, right? And so I explain that to people during the interview process, and we all do. And we say to people, if you are not made like that, if that is not how you want to work, this is not going to be a very fun place for you. And so don't join. This is just not going to work out. So I think being really upfront with people what the mission is, what the expectations are, but what you get in return during the interview process. Actually, some people say, do you know what? I say to people, this is not a 9 to 5 either. It's very much not a 9 to 5, right? You're going to work long hours, and you might end up working weekends. So if that is not what you want, there are loads of other amazing companies for you to work for, and there are no hard feelings either. It's just not maybe the right fit for you. So setting expectations and being clear, and then doing what you say, which is you do give people freedom, and you do give people the support of their team. So those are principles. The other big one for me, I actually have a lot of these, so I'll just tell you all of them. So solutions, not problems. So that's a really big part of the culture. I am not interested in, the problem, what went wrong, who was to blame. Just tell me what we're going to do to fix it. If I believe that everybody in the team works at that level and cares, then I think if something's gone wrong, it's almost certainly because some information was missing, some context was missing. There's a problem in the process, basically. So let's go and find the hole in the process, and let's go and fix it. And let's not make it about whose fault it was. So that's really important. And then empathy is the other really important thing. So we hire for people who have high EQ and who think about how other people think and feel. I think generally the way that we test for that is by asking really open-ended questions about a problem and seeing how they approach the problem, and just breaking down their thought process.
Give me an example of a problem.
So it'll depend on the topic, but let's say we're hiring for a product. You're saying, okay, well, this dentist said that they don't really like this feature. Just don't really like it. What do you do? Right? There's lots of ways that you can solve that problem, but the way that you answer that will tell me how much you care about what that dentist thinks. So are you going to go and phone them and say, can you please explain to me what exactly was it that you didn't like? Because I'm really interested. And actually, can you just show me on screen which bit of it was not working for you? And I'm going to give you some examples of how I might fix that. And then I want you to tell me which is your favorite, right? And it's that level of obsession and customer obsession and really caring about who you're building for that comes through. And the other way of answering that is I would give them a call and run some simple user tests. And you're like, you haven't convinced me that you really care about this problem. And so that's the difference. And it depends on the role, really. And I'm sure when you're thinking about, for example, in your dental practices, there's loads of examples where patient rings up and they've got a complaint. They've got a complaint because the dentist was running half an hour late.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about that? There's probably 5-6 different ways that you could answer that. in order of kind of really empathetic and really caring and thinking, how am I going to make sure that this patient, A, feels listened to, B, that I'm not throwing my dentist under the bus because it probably wasn't her fault that she was running late, C, that we maintain the brand integrity, and that I give the patient a solution and make them feel like we're trying to make amends. You know, there's definitely ways that you could break that down. That is not easy. It's not easy at all. But if you are explicit in your process and your hiring and in your interviewing that that's really what you're looking for, the people who do think like that will be like, yes, Raabiha, I want to work for you because you get it. I have the same idea about what good customer service looks like as you. I am going to really enjoy it here. Whereas if you don't have that, then it's not a click either way.
I like that. But there's always some that think or hope that they are like that and they want to be that, but they're not that. So it comes around to, have you ever realized that there's somebody who thought they might be a good fit for the team, but they weren't? And then you had to kind of, let them go, or like how do you navigate that, getting the wrong person on the team?
Yeah, it happens. And generally, I would say approach the problem again with empathy. If someone is, if it's not right for that person, if it's not working out for whatever reason, then the first assumption I'm going to make is that no one is doing anything deliberately, right? No one is deliberately doing a bad job. They think they're doing their best. We just have a different idea of what good performance looks like. So you have an honest conversation. Say, look, these were my expectations. Is this something that you think we can work towards in the next couple of weeks at improving? And this is what I would need to see. And if they say yes, then you do that. Whereas sometimes it's like, oh, do you know what? You're right. Maybe I just don't think like that. And maybe this is not what a job feels like, would be enjoyable for me. So, and then usually it's part ways and it's not personal, right? It's not every environment is perfect for everybody, and it's not personal when it goes wrong, and it shouldn't be taken as such. And the earlier you can have feedback conversations, the better it is for both parties. And you can leave on great terms and give them a great reference and explain why maybe it wasn't a fit right now. That really is how we should be running businesses and how we should be treating our people. And so often people leave the awkward conversations too late, and then it becomes personal. And it's as much, I think, that the manager's responsibility as the team member to have the honest conversation about what good performance looks like. And what we quite often find is that managers can't quantify what good performance looks like. They haven't actually explained this is what good looks like. So then the team member's like, well, I didn't know that's what you wanted of me.
Yeah.
I mean, now you tell me. I would have done that if I'd known. So I think that more honest conversations with people is, and it's not easy, but I think it's always. There's a great book on this, and it's, oh gosh, the name has just escaped me. It's by Radical Candor. That's it. Radical Candor. And it's a book about how to be honest how to be kind in your feedback, but honest and radically honest, because more often than not, it is the person receiving the feedback. It might hurt in the short term, but it's so much better for them in the long term that they've heard it and that they can do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've learned that over the years of being a practice owner. I think that was the hardest thing I ever had to do first, is letting someone go. But it's kind of like practice and figuring it out, hiring slowly and firing fast, but not necessarily firing, like you said, having that honest conversation, realizing early on whether you are a good fit for each other. Because I always say it's two ways, right? So yeah, no, I'm going to read that book. Sounds good. Now, I wanted to ask you actually, being a woman in business, do you ever feel, that you've had challenges because you're a woman, be it being the CEO and founder of a tech company, or being in healthcare as a doctor, or, because these spaces are both heavily dominated by men. So do you ever feel like, you've had your battles or struggles?
Honestly, I don't think I have. And maybe that's because I didn't notice, or because I wasn't really. So I grew up in Holland, and Holland is a very culturally, it's a very liberal country, as I think most people will probably appreciate and know. So when I was growing up, I don't think that I'm really thought about boys and girls being all that different. We were in a mixed class. I played sports with all the boys. I was a bit of a tomboy. And so certainly when I was growing up, I wasn't treated differently to the boys. And then as I got older, I think I just continued to have that view on life. And I think I'm someone that thinks about, playing the hand that I've been dealt, right? There's nothing I can do about being a woman. So I think I've had a lot of advantages and possibly as many disadvantages, and I've probably evened out at about neutral. But because I can't control I can control what I can control, basically.
Yeah.
And by and large, I tend to be quite optimistic about this sort of thing. And also as a woman, I think it's probably worth proving the point that there is no difference, and that women are just as capable. We don't need to discuss it. I'm just going to show you that I'm just, there's no difference, and let's not even talk about it. Let's just get on with it. I think that's a little bit more my approach, and that's not to undermine anyone else's experience that has had that. This has just been my experience, and maybe there's an element of me just being oblivious to if there has been any kind of hidden sexism in any of my experiences. Maybe I just haven't noticed, and maybe that is just the easiest way to deal with it.
You do have this, from what I'm gauging, tunnel vision. Like, you've got your eyes on everything. You don't care about the noise, which is probably why you're very highly successful, which is actually really lovely. I myself haven't experienced it, but I come across it a lot of people saying that they feel that there are challenges of being a woman and not being represented in areas of, kind of C-suite roles on top leadership. Like, higher up you go, there's less and less women, harder it is to get there. There's still the pay gap. There's still, going out on stage, you don't see many women. So, I think you've carved out a beautiful path for yourself. You've got your, is it called blinkers that the horses have, and you've gone and achieved, which is wonderful to see. It's so inspirational, and you lead beautifully.
It's also communities like yours and seeing examples of people that I think is important. And so I think seeing other women doing cool stuff is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And having a space to be able to discuss the things that are quite personal to women, that maybe aren't as relevant to men, is really important. So I think what I'm basically saying is I think it's changing because of the efforts of, women like you putting on these events where these things are discussed and where there are examples of, look at all of these people that have been able to do something different, and hopefully that becomes a bit of a blueprint so that, for your kids, it's not even something we talk about anymore.
Yeah.
It's just a given.
Yeah. Because I think women always talk about how they've spent so long hiding certain parts of being a woman, like menopause, like you mentioned earlier, menopause, the brain fog that comes with it, the hot flashes, heavy periods, how it affects their work, having kids. Like, I've had conversations with people who said that they just pretended like they didn't have kids because they felt that people thought that made them less committed or less able somewhat at their job, So I think that's why I think having women in roles of leadership just shows other women that actually these are not disadvantages. These are things that make us uniquely women, and it's a strength. I find that all these things are a strength, and more we talk about it, I think the less it seems like a thing. And like you said, hopefully it's not something that's has to be talked about for when it comes to my kids growing up.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. Now, being a woman, do you feel like you lead any differently than a man, or do you feel like, do you know what? Everything is the same because I don't compare myself. I see it the same. So for you, is that, no, it's the same? You don't see any differences?
I think it's probably, I think it probably is a bit different, but I think that's more of a style thing. I think there's so many ways that you can decide to be a leader. On one end of the spectrum, you can rule with an iron fist and be domineering and be feared, and I think that, you know, that's this stereotype of a male leader. There's loads of women who lead like, well, I think there are fewer, but I think that there are women who choose that style. And then there's a much more kind of consultative, collaborative, you know, everyone's voice is heard, you know, that side of the spectrum. And then there's probably everything in the middle. And I actually think it's probably also context dependent, because, you know, I'm sure it's the same for you, depending on who you're speaking to within your organization. You've got senior people and you've got less senior people. You're obviously going to take a different approach, right? You can't, there's no kind of one size fits all leadership style. I think it depends on the situation and the people that you're dealing with. So, but I think by and large, I suppose that women tend to be a little bit more empathetic, I think, when it comes to the people situations when they do arise. That's obviously, you know, a huge generalization. But I do think that there are some things that women are strong at naturally that can be a real benefit when you're working in any business.
Yeah. The reason why I want to highlight those, because I think a lot of women feel like maybe we aren't designed to lead. And I want to say, no, actually, I think all of these things like empathy and being, you know, emotionally intelligent and intuitive are big, big skills to have, because businesses and teams rely on people. And I do generally believe, I know it's a large generalization, but I do believe that women are better with people. We are there more we have active listening skills naturally, and we want to know more about them. And I feel when we first took over the business, I felt like that was a weakness. I was like, oh my God, I'm getting too friendly with my team, and then I don't know how to now, you know, be authoritative, because now I'm like their friend. And so, you know, I've learned where, like you said, to have certain hats and skill sets or characteristics showing up more. But I definitely think women are and can be good leaders. And I think I really liked what you said, that rather than thinking of yourself as a female leader, you're just a leader. Like, you know, not kind of seeing it as something that is gender specific.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what I want to actually end with, thank you, Sonia, is a little bit about kind of success. It's kind of what I like to ask a lot of my guests, is what success looks like for you now, because I'm sure it's very different to what it was when you graduated as a young doctor, but now as the CEO and founder. What does success mean and look like for you? And any advice to anybody out there that's chasing success of any kind?
It's a really good question, and I suppose it's something that I do ask myself a lot, because there is a clear drive towards something, but I don't think it's an end goal. I think the thing that gives me energy and motivation is building a really big business that helps people get access to this type of specialist healthcare that I think is hard to get access to. And I think every time we get one step closer to nailing that problem, I found that motivates me an awful lot. I mean, I work a lot and I really enjoy what I do for that reason. And so I don't think, when I think about what does the future look like, and if, you know, is it kind of retiring on a yacht? Definitely not. I don't. That isn't aspirational for me. The things that motivate me, and you're right, I think it has changed. I think when you're young, you think about material things much more. I've realized that the material things are not as important to me. I think being able to spend time with friends, family, and doing work that is really cool with really cool people is the biggest privilege, and money is sort of irrelevant in that. You know, you need obviously a certain amount of money to be comfortable. But so that's, I think, what success looks like for me. And I don't really have any good advice for people thinking about what success looks like, because it is so different. But perhaps what I would say is that the idea that you wouldn't be satisfied with a life that isn't Instagram, you know, perfect, and that actually you're perfectly happy having a quiet weekend in with your family, watching a movie, and that isn't success, is nonsense.
Well, I left your event and didn't come for dinner because I went home for movie night.
Exactly. I can't remember what it was. Was it? I think it was like don't know how to train your dragon or something like that. You were quite specific about the movie, and even
Yeah.
the kids had picked it, right? And that is so it's so important to recognize those successes, like being able to hold together a job, hold together a family, have good relationships, be healthy is success. And I think we have a lot of unhappy people in this world that objectively have a pretty good lot, objectively, that they are not having a terrible time, but there's something material that they're chasing for some unknown reason that's keeping them unhappy. And I think that I suspect it's an element of, I suspect social media plays a big part. I think that it's a lot to do with the image that is portrayed of a lot of people's lives that's maybe not that realistic.
Mm,
And people not being able to live in the moment and really ask themselves the question, like, what actually makes me happy?
mm.
Which is a
Um,
shame because there's never been a better time to be alive, I would say.
really? You think
Well,
that?
if you think about all the indicators of what, if you think about what the difference is between us and living in Victorian Britain, we're all pretty healthy. We
Yeah.
have, a roof over our heads. Most of us are able to do a job that we enjoy, living in a city, in a country that's relatively safe and free of war. I don't think it's too bad at the moment,
Yeah.
even though obviously there's a lot of doom and gloom, and there are terrible things happening, and it just reminds us not to be complacent about it, I think, because these things are fragile, as I think COVID showed us.
Yes. Yes. I think a lot of people's viewpoints of work-life balance changed when they could work from home and yeah, and realize the importance of family time really. But yeah, what's that
Yeah,
saying? Build a life you don't need to take a vacation from. So yeah, uh, that's the one. So work-life balance.
better than throwing the kitchen sink at something.
Yeah, on that is just made up, Sonia. But I have a feeling now I'm going to say it because I'm like a sponge. So I'm going to be like saying, throwing the kitchen sink. I'll say it to Janaid when I see him on Thursday. I'll say,
You
we're going to
should.
throw the kitchen sink at this. Well, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest. This is going to be so insightful for so many. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely as always.